Market share is an extremely simple concept, but there's definitely a big wiggle. And let's use Sprite and 7 Up to make those points. Now, again, market share, simple calculation. It is simply your sales divided by the market sales. Your sales divided by the market sales. So if 7 Up sales are 40 and Sprite sales are 60, and obviously I made the math real easy, 7 Up has a share of 40 and Sprite has a share of 60. And by the way, that's the terminology they use. They don't use in the industries. They don't use percentage. In other words, they don't say 7 Up has a 40% share. I don't know why that is. It's just the nomenclature. So they say 7 Up has a 40 share, Sprite has a 60 share. Well, that's obviously really, really simple, but here's the wiggle. How do you define the market? What about Mountain Dew? Why don't we include Mountain Dew in there? Mountain Dew is very, very similar to Sprite and 7 Up, but it is different. 7 Up, Sprite, those are both lemon lime sodas. Mountain Dew is Pepsi's, not quite exactly same as 7 Up or Sprite, but what did Pepsi do? They came out with a very, very similar product. They came out with Sierra Mist. So now we can't look at that market without Sierra Mist anymore, so we can't look at those numbers. We've got to add Sierra Mist in there as well. So again, the issue is, the trick is, how do you define the market? Let's make it even a little bit trickier and talk about Coke and Pepsi. Who's got larger market share, Coke or Pepsi? Well, it's a trick question, but when I look at those two products right there, a package of Coke, a package of Pepsi, and we're talking about here in the United States, you might be surprised to find out that Pepsi's bigger. Pepsi has larger share than Coke on packages in the United States. But notice my terminology. I was referring to cans and bottles. I intentionally left out fountain sales. Now, fountain sales, that's when you get a soda at a place like a fast food chain, a convenience store like 7-Eleven, at a movie theater, and so on. And if you look at that fountain there, what do you see that's kind of unique? Hey, there's Pepsi products off to the left, and then there's also Coke products. You don't see that a lot of times. Oftentimes it's either Coke or Pepsi. And take a wild guess who's got a larger share of the fountain business. Oh, yeah, big time. It's Coke. Coke is much, much, much bigger in the fountain business than Pepsi is. So if we want to narrowly define it as, hey, North American packaged sales, Pepsi's bigger. But the second we add fountain in there, Coke gets a lot bigger. And I was just talking about the United States and North America. Let's broaden our market internationally. Coke kicks butt internationally, much, much, much bigger than Pepsi. So again, the concept of market share is very, very simple. It's your sales divided by the market sales. The tricky part of it is, how do you define the market? We'll talk obviously a lot more about market share. Just wanted to get us started with that basic concept. One other issue from chapter 1 is this topic of the so-called dark side of marketing. Not everyone is a big fan of marketing. Some people think marketing has some downsides. Marketing is often criticized as trying to get people to buy things that they don't need or want. There is no doubt about it, illegal practices do occur. There is misrepresentation. There are unscrupulous marketers out there. With regard to consumption, many people say that consumption is good because it leads to economic activity, but a lot of people think that overconsumption is a bad thing. And so there's no doubt that some marketing activities have had detrimental effects on society. I was just using Coke and Pepsi and Sierra Mist and Sprite and 7 Up for the market share discussion, but a lot of people think that one of the really bad sides of marketing soft drinks is getting people, especially younger people, to over consume sugary sodas to have a very detrimental side effect. In fact, that kind of addictive consumption of unhealthy products, many people think that's one of the darkest sides of marketing, manipulating and exploiting people. So there definitely are some downsides. As marketing was really taking off, mass marketing in the late 50s, one of the kind of influential books that was an indictment of marketing was a book called The Hidden Persuaders by a social scientist, Vance Packard. What makes us buy, believe, and even vote the way we do? Well, it's those marketers persuading us without our knowledge. This was very much of an indictment against marketing, and there's no doubt that sometimes manipulative practices do occur. But for our purposes, for this class, we're going to, when we talk about the various marketing components, we'll talk about how they can be abused, and we'll talk about how illegal practices can occur. But for the most part, we're taking kind of a positive view of marketing.